So Pete Buttigieg, who I would describe as one of the best communicators in the Democratic Party right now, is back with some more truth today. He was on Jen Psaki's show this morning, and they were talking about the collapse of the bridge in Baltimore, the Francis Scott Key Bridge. And he has obviously been tasked with overseeing a lot of the recovery from this awful tragedy, as he is the transportation secretary. But Jen Psaki asked him an interesting question, which was something along the lines of, Donald Trump hasn't even acknowledged the tragedy. He hasn't even talked about the victims of it. And he was kind of asked, why do you think that is? And I just think his answer is terrific. So we're going to look at that clip here in a minute. And then later in the video, we're going to compare Biden's response to Trump's response to what happened in Baltimore. But here is that Pete Buttigieg clip. Take a look.
I mean, Trump is running for president. He has yet to acknowledge the victims of the tragedy in Baltimore who were fixing the potholes on the bridge at the time of the collapse. All of them were immigrants. I have my own views, but why do you think he said absolutely nothing?
Yeah, and I'll take care to avoid talking about campaigns while I'm sitting here. But just at a human level, it would be helpful for the former president to weigh in here and show the solidarity that we have seen from most, if not all, elected officials on either side of the aisle because of the human nature of what happened. The fact that you had, these 6 people who lost their lives, a 7th very seriously injured, who are out there doing the work that all of us count on but don't always think about. That was a chilly night. They were out filling potholes, mending the road, getting that bridge squared away while most everybody else was sleeping so that it'd be ready for traffic in the morning. We count on so many workers in this country, many of them immigrants, to do these vitally important infrastructure jobs. They're not glamorous. They're not the highest paying jobs in the country, but they're absolutely essential. And I think just, again, at a human level, showing some regard for that is very important. And that's what characteristically President Biden was doing when I was with him in Baltimore on Friday.
Yeah, he is just so good at it. I think he perfectly lays out, the reality surrounding this situation. The fact that Trump hasn't acknowledged it, and it would be really nice if we could have everybody from both parties kind of united behind this effort to recover, make sure that the people in the community and the surrounding areas are taken care of, that the bridge recovery and rebuild is fully funded by the federal government. But thus far, Donald Trump has stayed away from the important topics and kind of played into the Republican conspiracy theories about what happened with this bridge. But, I think we all have a pretty good guess as to why Donald Trump has not talked about the victims. It's because they're immigrants, right? He is constantly demonizing migrants. Any opportunity he gets, even if it's a lie, he doesn't care. He will always go after these folks and kick them when many of these people are already being targeted. Kick them when they're down, you might describe as, because, MAGA just comes after migrants so often for absolutely no reason. Trump is not talking about them because they're migrants, and the MAGA Republicans are not talking about them because they're migrants. But remember, these are people who are working on the bridge. They were filling potholes when the bridge collapsed. They were helping the port, and they are also from Maryland. Right? And Donald Trump doesn't care. He won't say anything about it. He won't do anything about it. He won't send his thoughts. He won't reach out to the family like a good person would, especially someone who's running for president or is a former president. He's not going to do any of that because, again, as we've talked about on this channel, that's just who Donald Trump is. He's just a bad guy. And also, isn't it remarkable how, there's some trouble in Congress trying to get these MAGA Republicans to agree to help rebuild this bridge, have the federal government take care of it? Like, what is wrong with these people? Like, it's just so mind-boggling to me every time I see something like this. When there's a tragedy, whether it be a natural disaster, whether it be just a freak accident like this, for some reason, the MAGA Republicans never really want to come to the rescue. Is it because it's a Democratic state? Maybe. I wouldn't put that out of the question for a lot of these people in Congress, the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world. And also, aside from the humanity portion of this, which is tragic, and Donald Trump, as we talked about, is yet to mention it, whereas President Biden has talked about it extensively, aside from that part of it, can you imagine if Donald Trump were president when this happened, when this bridge collapsed? What, would we get a tweet maybe? No action on it? Wouldn't do anything in Congress about it? Not try to solve it? Not comfort the communities? Maybe give a speech in Baltimore and then turn it into a campaign event? Probably, right? I can't imagine any longer with these tragedies that happen around the United States and having Trump deal with it. He is just such an incompetent I'll be nice, such an incompetent guy, that, the thought of him trying to deal with this is terrifying. And I think my reaction in the days after the bridge collapse, after we kind of learned more about how awful it was, something along the lines of, thank God President Biden is in office right now. I'm just so thankful that we have competent leadership, and we've seen it throughout his tenure as president. Just so thankful we have somebody in the office who's actually interested in doing the job and is not interested in like the amount of followers he has on Twitter. He kind of wants to actually like address these issues, make sure that people are taken care of, and actually be president, not try to be a celebrity. And this kind of leads me into President Biden's response. What was it and how it compares to Donald Trump's? We know what Trump's response was and continues to be. It's ignoring the victims, playing down the tragedy, and even spreading conspiracy theories about it that have been amplified and created by MAGA Republicans, such as it being a DEI problem, which is, again, just the new conspiracy that Republicans are running with. But President Biden's response was so human, right? He's actually like a caring person who cares about the country and cares about being a good president, right? He gave a speech in front of the collapsed bridge in Maryland the other day, and I'll play you a portion of it that I think is really moving and really significant, and then we'll talk about it after. Here's that clip here.
To all the military members and first responders, and most importantly to the people of Maryland, I'm here to say your nation has your back, and I mean it. Your nation has your back. And you've got, without exaggeration, one of the finest delegations in the Congress of any state in the Union. Amen. And they know how to get things done, and we're going to get this paid for, aren't we?
Yes. Yes.
All right. I was just briefed by the Unified Command about the ongoing impact of this tragic collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge last Tuesday. The damage is devastating, and our hearts are still breaking. Eight construction workers went into the water when the bridge fell. 6 lost their lives. Most were immigrants, but all were Marylanders. Hard-working, strong, and selfless. After pulling a night shift fixing potholes, they were on a break when the ship struck. Just seconds before, one of the men, named Carlos, who was only 24, left a message for his girlfriend. Here's what it said. "We just poured cement. We're waiting for it to dry," he said. Well, to all the families and loved ones who are grieving, I've come here to grieve with you. We all are.
See, when I watch clips like that and kind of think about the 4 years where Trump was president, I take like such a deep breath, right? A relaxing deep breath, kind of like, man, it's comforting. It's nice. It's nice to know that we have somebody in the White House who actually cares and does their job, as I've kind of talked about in this video. And listen to what he said. He's like, the nation has your back. We are with you. And in the same speech, he announced $8 million in an investment for a local port to keep the economy of Baltimore running. And then he also talked about the victims. Notice how he actually talked about the people who lost their lives and the people who were injured as a result, and even the family members and loved ones of the victims as well. It's just such a remarkable contrast. And it really shows you the choice in 2024 between someone who actually cares, is a nice person, good guy, versus a narcissistic lunatic like Donald Trump. He shouted out the congressional delegation saying this is a fine group of people who are going to get it done to help the federal government fully fund this bridge. He also announced that the port is going to be fully open in May. Because, they actually are on top of these things. They address the issues when they present themselves. Whereas, with Trump, he might say, oh, we'll get to it someday. But, Biden's actually in Baltimore, meeting with people, meeting with leaders in the state, the governor and his team, and actually taking action. So I just really wanted to highlight that clip from Joe Biden, and in contrast with what Pete Buttigieg talked about in his clip, because it's just such a difference. It's night and day between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and just, obviously being a good person, but also the ability to do the job. The competency of Biden is far outweighs that of Trump. And look, again, I just really think this is an important point. Like, I really hope that this kind of event is something that people consider in 2024 when they're casting their ballot, right? Like, Biden exhibited proper leadership that shows that he cares and actually wants to solve things and comforts communities when there are tragedies. And if you look back at the Trump presidency when there were tragedies such as like a mass shooting or even the COVID pandemic, like remember in that interview with Jonathan Swain from Axios at the time, and Trump was like, yeah, there are thousands of people dying per day in the COVID pandemic. It is what it is. It is what it is an insane thing to say. And I think that, when we're thinking about these tragedies and the role of the president in addressing them and kind of taking care of the community, just look at the difference between the two men. And I really hope that this is something that people consider in 2024. But anyway, folks, that's going to wrap up the video for today. I really appreciate you watching. Make sure to subscribe down below. It goes such a long way. I greatly appreciate it. Of course, also leave a like on the video, comment, share it with anybody you think needs to see it. And as I always say at the end of these videos, if we persevere, we work hard, we'll win in 2024, and of course beat Donald Trump and the MAGA movement.